Okay, it is 12:02. So welcome everyone. I am really happy to have this group today to talk about bystander intervention regarding identity-based harassment. So if that's the program you came for, you are in the right place. My name is Betsy Vinoy, and I will be facilitating this program. I am joined by the incomparable Anne Grabowski, who will be helping with administrative things behind the scenes, letting people in. I also think that Anne will be watching the chat for me in case things come up that I'm not able to see, and watching participants and all of that, raising their hands and things like that. So thank you so much, Anne, for being here. Looks like we have a great group today. I see a lot of really familiar faces from previous trainings. I want to start today by saying that I have experience with bystander intervention that I brought to ASAOE, and I'm really happy to share that with you. I came into bystander intervention training through the field of preventing domestic and sexual violence, but it has since become a really commonplace or effective way to intervene in any kind of harassment. And so today we're going to specifically talk about identity-based harassment. And my particular affinity for bystander intervention strategies is I just love how they capture the power of small actions that can be committed by regular people. We are not here to say that people need to make heroic efforts or put themselves in any kind of harm's way. It's really just small things that you can do. So that being said, I want to really start with my intentions for these two programs. As you can see, it's part one of two. So my intentions for today is to, one, make today meaningful. Something I've really learned about bystander intervention is that we have all had some level of experience of bystander intervention, but we don't know what each other's experience has been. And so my intention is to help bring people's real experiences, their hangups, and their ideas into the room. I have some things that we can do in terms of bystander intervention, but I am willing to bet that there are people participating today who have done something or who have seen some kind of intervention that I want to know about. I also want to mention, and I'll mention this more than once, no one is expected to participate in anything that makes them uncomfortable. Any kind of activity that I bring up is always optional. There's no problem for people who say, you know what, I don't feel like sharing that. That's not something I want to do today. The second thing I want to do is identify the barriers that people have to intervening. And that's the whole reason we have these trainings, right? If there were no barriers to intervening, then we wouldn't need these trainings. So we'll talk about those before we actually get into the third intention, which is to identify strategies for intervening. And that's all pretty standard here. And this is to prepare for part two. Today's session is a precursor to the program that will happen on January 18th. You do not need to attend today in order to attend the second one in January. I will start with a review on that program. And so if there's anyone you know that wasn't able to attend today, make sure they feel totally welcome to attend in January as well. The second part that we'll cover in the second program is really doing a deep dive into scenarios, really digging up a lot of ways to intervene. Because what I came across in doing the research behind bystander intervention is that the number one thing that makes people more likely to intervene is simply practice. It's simply doing it and having either positive or neutral experiences. So we're just going to go through scenarios and really practice them. And finally, the last part of the second session will be to come up with some proactive strategies to make it less likely that a bystander would need to intervene in a harassing situation. Because at the end of the day, what we're all hoping to do is to build a culture that is proactively inclusive. And so those are my intentions for today and to set us up for next time. Just a little bit of how I kind of approach this work or these programs is that you can interrupt me to ask questions at any time. But right now it's kind of difficult for me to see people's faces. I can see if you raise your hand. So if people want to stop and ask a question, please feel free to do that. Or stop and add something to the conversation. You can do that. You can also always add it in the chat. So getting started today, in the first sense of making today meaningful, for those of you who attended the last session on improv and making that work for you, I would really like to, like I said earlier, bring some personalities and real life experiences into the room by playing the yes and game. So bystander intervention requires some courage, because anytime you're going to intervene in a situation, it's a little bit scary. Like, it can be a little bit scary. You're not even sure if what you're going to do is going to be effective. And so we want to start building up our courage so that we can practice these bystander techniques. So in order to do that, what I'd like to do, like I said, is play the yes and game. For those of you who'd like a review of the yes and game, it's really simple. And I'm going to take the suggestion that we had from last time and the practice. Actually, someone practiced this last time, which was, you can do this in the chat. So yes and is just simply, there will be a starting statement. I think what I used last time was, or someone used, I just can't wait for summer, or something like that. And people just respond with, yes, and I think what I said was, oh, I can't wait for the firefly. Yes, and I'll see the fireflies. So that's a review. Can I get some sense that people know the game and are ready to participate in that? Can I hear from some folks? All right, I see some thumbs ups. That's really helpful. That's really great. Okay, oh, lots of thumbs up. Okay, so I have a prompt that I'm ready to go with, but in the vein of encouraging people to be spontaneous, is there anyone else who would like to start with a prompt? Is there anyone else who has a prompt in mind? I'll just take a look at the list and give people a couple of seconds to be brave. Okay, it looks like that's a push too far this time. That's okay. Here is the prompt for today. And what I'd like you to do is just put your yes and in the chat. So I am looking forward to the upcoming break. Yes and. There are lots of participants. Oh, wow. And don't worry about matching the one ahead of the other one, because it's all just fun. And Anne, I cannot see the chat, so I'm hoping that you could jump in here and share, what people are basically saying.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I'm just going to grab some at random, because it really does look like everyone is participating, which is fantastic. So we have some people spending time with their family, yes, and spending quality time with family, quality time at home. Yes, and relaxing. Yes, and sleeping. I hear that. Oh, we got a lot of people looking forward to that relaxation and sleep. Oh, yes, and cookie decorating.
Ooh, I can finally see the chat now. So yes, I'm getting all of these too. This is one.
I was about to say yes, and you can see the chat.
All right. Thank you all for jumping in with that. I really appreciate it. So now that we've done that, we can go ahead and move on to the next slide about who we are, how to make today meaningful. So this is another chat activity. I want you to think about this question. Do you know someone who has been harassed due to their identity? However you see that right now. We're going to talk more about that in a moment, but just think about that, and you can go ahead, if you feel comfortable, and add your answer to the chat. Okay, lots of people. Did anyone see a single no? I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. And that is usually the case. Yes, here we go. Yeah, see, Christopher Williams is really saying, like, wow, everyone knows that. The next question, everyone knows someone, I'm sorry. The next question is, when you can think about a situation where someone has been harassed, whether it was you, someone else, someone you've heard about, was there a bystander present who could have intervened? And chat only yes or no. Wow. Wow. This is the really hopeful part of bystander intervention. Yeah. People are doing great with this chat participation, and I really appreciate it. Yeah, this is the thing about bystander intervention training is we can talk about, and we will talk about, how this is a pervasive experience that people have. It's almost universal. We are all touched by harassment in some way, shape, or form, but also so often, very often, there is someone there who could have done something, and that is very encouraging. And to just continue in this vein of, like, this is personal, this is meaningful to me, it's probably meaningful to all of you, that's probably why you're here. I want to talk a little bit about why I step in. So this picture here is a picture of my brothers and my two nieces, and that's my little girl there on my one brother's lap. And the reason I really got into bystander intervention before I had heard of it being a thing is that one of my brothers was hit by a drunk driver in 2008. And he was left with what you call a severe traumatic brain injury. And that meant that he would never work again. His memory is significantly impaired to the degree that, like, he might tell you something in one conversation and forget that he told you it and tell you again, but the details will be different because his memory is really significantly impacted. And I don't want to start out this training with, like, a really sad story, like, oh gosh, a drunk driver. If my brother were to walk into the room today, he would, like, light up the room. He has a huge personality and is a lot of fun, and his memory does not seem to be stopping him too much. He is taken care of. He's permanently retired by the military, so please don't feel too upset about that. But here's what happened for me when this all happened in 2008. At the time, I was in a position where I was training counselor advocates to respond to people in crisis who came to the domestic violence agency for help. And part of my role in training these counselor advocates was to train them to respond effectively and in a culturally competent kind of a way to anyone from any background. And when my brother acquired this disability, and I all of a sudden was put in positions where I thought, is this activity going to be okay with him? Am I going to have to advocate for him in this situation? It dawned on me that I had never even considered what life is like, what it's like to navigate life with some kind of a disability. I all of a sudden started looking at restaurants like, oh, a wheelchair could never get in here. Oh, are my own slides for this class accessible to someone with a visual impairment? Spoiler alert, they were not. Then it spread out to all kinds of other identities. Have I ever thought about what it's like to be in central Pennsylvania and speak English as a second language? Have I ever thought about what it's like to be in central Pennsylvania, where I am, and see Confederate flags on people's trucks if I am a person of color? I hadn't, but I started to, because what I really learned is that a lot of people's identities can make them feel unsafe, unwelcome, or otherwise uncomfortable, um, in some situation, in some capacity, simply because of their identity. And I wanted to know, how can I give people a break? How can I show up for a person with a brain injury and say, hey, you said something that was kind of, inappropriate, maybe off the wall, but I can handle it. Um, how can I be that kind of a person? And that is why I step in. I see two people commenting about the captioning. Yeah, I saw this as a feature and I thought, of course, is my presentation accessible to people who may have trouble hearing, um, in whatever way? I actually use captions all of the time for everything. So there's that. Um, moving right along here, that's my why. I really want to talk or hear from all of you about what your why is. You all showed up today for one reason or another. And I just want to start with this little activity. Again, it's optional. You do not have to do this if you don't want to. What we're going to do is Anne and Anne alone is going to have access to whatever it is that you share. And we will share about 3 stories later today to really talk about, what are the experiences of the people in this room? Why is this work important? So the activity is, first, consider why you care about this work. Why does it matter to you? Why do you want to know about bystander intervention? Then just try to condense it to a few sentences. It could be a story. It could be just a simple goal you have in your life. Then I want you to go to the chat, choose Anne, and send it to her via private chat if you feel so inclined, and avoid sharing any identifying details. We want to keep this really safe and confidential for everyone, so we all feel comfortable in the room. And also we want to make sure that no one is sharing something that would be like a required mandated report. We want to make sure we're just taking those precautions. So just to make sure that everybody knows what we're doing here, a couple of examples. Maybe a memory of a time you wanted to step in, but you didn't know what to do, or you were afraid, whatever the case may be. Or maybe someone stepped in for you in the past and you saw how powerful it was. Anne has graciously offered to share her why. So I will let Anne go ahead and do that.
Thank you. And if anybody, I can see quite a few of you are sending me direct messages already, so that is fantastic. If you're wondering who in the world is Anne, that's me. I'm kind of working in the background here, so please, like Betsy said, feel free to direct message me your stories. I will omit any kind of identifying information that you share, so even if you type something in and then say, oh, whoops, I'll use my best judgment. And again, if you keep it directly to me, that makes it easier for us to manage these. But let me go ahead and share my why. For a good amount of time, I had friends, very close friends, who worked for the former Women's Resource Center in Center County in Pennsylvania, now known as Center Safe. So through them, I was lucky enough to know about a lot of resources and know a lot of people who could help. But I didn't really have any idea of how to put anything into action. And unfortunately, I experienced an issue of domestic violence against myself in November of 2015. My partner at the time attacked me and I left the place we were staying. I was very emotional and I was also in a Halloween costume. So those of you who live in State College, you know, sometimes around Halloween, there are folks who maybe getting a little into the party spirit and maybe having some extra drinks, or maybe in a state where folks may not want to interact with them. But I was going person to person saying, help me, I need help, someone's after me. And everybody I was speaking to thought, okay, we have somebody here who's had a bit too much to drink on the holiday, and left me. thankfully, eventually somebody said, okay, this is not right. This should not be happening. This is not a normal holiday event to find this woman crying and asking for help. And they got me the help that I needed. But I realized in that moment, I was educated about the resources, but I didn't know what to do when I needed those resources myself. So that gave me a why to know that nobody should need to go through that. And that if I see that happen, to not think, maybe this is somebody who, insert excuse here, instead going to, this is somebody who may need help and may need intervention. So that's my why. And also my shout out to Center Safe and all the resources they have provided. Again, I see quite a few of you sending me direct messages, which is wonderful. And again, I will condense these, and once Betsy is ready, I'll go ahead and start sharing some.
Okay, so what we'll do, Anne, is I'm going to go ahead and do a couple more slides.
Sounds good.
That'll give you enough time to sort out, some examples that we could share. All right.
Sounds great.
Okay. So what I want to talk about here with identity-based harassment is, what does that even mean? So it could be race, ethnicity, or immigration. That's what we all think about, right? When we hear identity-based harassment or bias and discrimination, the things that automatically pop up for everybody, and everybody seems to think, maybe not everybody, but a lot of people seem to think it's only about race, ethnicity, nationality, etc. But there are a lot of other identities. Sexual orientation comes up, gender identity comes up, religion, disability or mental health, age is another. And how about socioeconomic status? I also want to point out that certainly this can apply to domestic or dating violence, sexual violence, and bullying, meaning like identity-based harassment can happen in these ways. Survivors of sexual assault will certainly tell you that when they share their story, they are sometimes met with being called names or being told it was their fault, things like that. In the chat, is there anything else that I should be adding to this list that you can imagine being part of this identity-based harassment kind of cloud? I'll just give people a moment to add anything if they'd like to. Oh, yes, pregnancy and infant loss. Yes, that's great. Thank you, Cynthia. And family suicide, yes, absolutely. So that might fall under like mental health, but in a different kind of a way. Yes. And political affiliation, I really thought about putting that in here in the environment that we're in right now. In doing the research for this presentation, I learned that harassment, I learned the statistics around harassment for Asian Americans in the wake of COVID has really increased. And I had heard that before, but when I really looked at it, that's not the same thing, but also like, you can just imagine how COVID and political affiliations kind of come together. Yes. Oh yes, absolutely. I'm blanking on the word for physical looks or weight. I want to say, well, if someone can remember that for me, there's a specific phrase that people, body image? No, that's not it. But anyway, body shaming. Yes, thank you. That's wonderful. Thank you, Christina and Jessica, and all of you for all of those excellent additions. So for the purpose of today, I want to just add some definitions to our plate, just so that we are talking about the same things. When we say the word bias, we are just talking about a preference for or against something. This can be positive, it can be negative, or it can be neutral. Bias in and of itself is not a negative thing. It is not always a negative thing. My example for this is I very much prefer Pepsi products over Coke products. And I do apologize for the text heavy slides, but I will make this presentation available to people. And I just liked having these definitions visible to everyone. Moving on from bias to prejudice, which is different. It is a strong bias, usually negative. When someone is prejudiced against something, they have strong feelings about not liking it, regardless of the context. In my example, if I go to a restaurant and they only have Coke products, I will probably only order a water. That's a prejudice, right? But when we move on to discrimination, we start talking about people and groups and action taken against a group. So this is actions taken based on a prejudice. You could even say that maybe my choosing the water over the Coke could be discrimination, but I want to focus discrimination on people, not things. That's what we're talking about today. Bystander intervention is about behavior toward people and interrupting harmful behavior toward people. So discrimination is when you put your thoughts or feelings about a specific person or a group of people into action. For example, intentionally misgendering a person because you have a problem with anyone who has a transgender identity. You think it's wrong, you think it is not legitimate, something like that. I hope that that makes sense to everyone so far. I want to add one more definition because I think this is really common. I know it's really common, and that is bullying. And that would be basically, it could be discrimination over a long period of time. It's unwanted, aggressive behavior that involves a real or perceived power imbalance. The behavior is repeated or has the potential to be repeated over time. Sorry for reading all those words on the screen. I just wanted to make sure that when we say prejudice, we mean this definition. When we say discrimination, we mean this one, and that bullying is showing a pattern. And getting into our purpose for today, we are here for practice, not perfection. Today, while I practice, I may have already say something that is hurtful to another person today. Part of the work of bystander intervention is to model what to do when you make a mistake. If I could certainly give examples. In fact, just the last example of intentionally misgendering someone, I've never done that, but I have misgendered a person. I was in the Target line getting coffee and I was distracted. And I just said she, and I literally saw the hurt on the person's face. And I think the important thing there for everybody to know is you own it. You either apologize or, just correct yourself and say the correct pronoun, and you move on and make sure you don't do it again, right? But we can also do something that hurts another person when we intervene. Sometimes trying to intervene means that we make mistakes, and today is a safe place to make those mistakes. We have permission to practice today, permission to make mistakes. We absolutely cannot know it all. Our world is evolving, our social lives are evolving. For example, it used to be that using the word partner to describe your significant other was inclusive for the LGBTQ population because they may not be able to say boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife without there being some kind of stigma attached to whatever they were or to their sexual orientation identity. But now things have changed and evolved, and some people don't appreciate people who are heterosexual using the word partner. And effective bystanders are teachable, right? These all kinds of teachable moments will happen when you practice bystander intervention. And modeling teachability is part of this work. I already said that. So I do want to say that I don't know how many people have read the book Atomic Habits, but if you have, I really enjoy it. And maybe I'm late to the party with it, But one of the studies that he mentioned that I really appreciated, and it applies to bystander intervention, is he talked about a professor who had a photography class and decided to do an experiment around quantity and quality. And to one group of students, he said, okay, you're going to be graded on the number of photos that you turn in at the end of the semester, the sheer volume. The more you have, the better your grade. And the other class could only submit one picture, and it just had to be the quality of that picture was what they would be graded on. And what he found was that the people who just took picture after picture after picture after picture, that did the quantity version, produced better photos at the end of the semester. Because doesn't that make sense? They had the safety to practice and try out new things, whereas only being able to do one and to make it perfect just puts a lot of pressure and makes it harder to do things really well. So I hope that lands for some people. Okay, Anne, we are ready. If you are ready.
I am ready.
People stories in the room. Excellent.
Okay, I've got my notebook, and again, I'm not reading these word for word, just to generalize them a little bit more. In no particular order, starting off with a story of we have a mom who was watching her child at a scouting event, and this child was trying to learn, trying to check out where mom might be, and the child got reprimanded for not paying attention by, it seems to be the scout leader. So this kid got yelled at in a public space and really run through it. And this person's why, and their thought is, they feel they should have stepped in and said, hey, you know, that level of yelling at a child may not be necessary. We don't need to be doing that. That's not productive and safe. Which I am starting with this example because I thought this was a very well-rounded approach to the why. I see a few people who say that they may want to add to or share their story. Feel free to continue to send those either directly to me, or if you'd like to share your story out loud. Betsy, are you good if we pause when I'm done to see if anybody would like to?
Yes, that'd be great.
Cool. All right, let me go through a couple more we have here. We had somebody, and this was one that I really relate to, somebody who said when they were in high school, they had somebody who was working with them to help them navigate the education system. So maybe they didn't have someone else at home or someone else telling them you should be doing this and this is how it should go. So this other individual stepped in and guided this student through the process so that they could be a successful student. And now this person, their why is, I want to be that person for other people, because we know that there is a need, and we know that there is a benefit from doing this that lasts the person's whole life. So that was another great one. One thing that a quote that I saw more than one person write down or enter. So I'm going to read this one exactly as I see it. Because everyone belongs at the table, or everyone deserves a seat at the table. And I am very happy to see that one so frequently. We want all voices heard, and as bystanders, we want to open the door for more voices to enter. Got, I think, 3 or 4 more I want to go over very quickly. A few folks said, my why is that I need more tools in my toolbox. So we have a lot of folks who really want to do the bystander intervention. They just need the hows, the whys, the what do I do's. So wonderful that we're here today. A lot of folks saying they want to be able to advocate for their own children. There were a few individuals who have children who identify as non-binary or who are in the LGBTQA community, and they want to be able to advocate for them in a way that is safe for the student and also beneficial. So that's another desire for education there. this one I thought was very interesting. This is a wonderful why. Someone says, I want someone, if I am being harassed, to step in and say, no, this is not okay. But with the tables flipped, sometimes I'm afraid. I'm afraid to step in and say, wait, that's not okay. So wanting to learn how to do that and how to stand on our feet with that. And finally, the last one I'll read from the chat, and then we'll see if anybody wants to share in a group setting. Advocating in a private setting is very different from advocating in a public setting. So some folks may be comfortable advocating to their family at the dinner table, but not quite as comfortable advocating to the boss at the team meeting the next week, something like that, where there's a power dynamic or a greater number of people in an audience, for example. So wanting to be able to advocate both in small and large audiences. So that is just a snippet of some of the wonderful things that were sent to me. And I'll hand it back to you, Betsy, to see if we have anybody else who wants to share.
Sure. If there are people who would like to share by, turning on your camera or turning on your sound, let us know.
This was kind of touched on in one of, my name is Katie, my pronouns are she, they, by the way. One of the, or I think this had been touched on by one of the comments, but there have just been now too many situations for my comfort where I have such regret where I didn't intervene. And I wanted to intervene, but I was too scared. And I don't want that number to keep growing.
That is so great, because I would be willing to bet there are a solid number of people in this group that have that same feeling. I am one of them. Even though I practice a lot of bystander intervention, I do not intervene every single time. And I want to meet the people who do intervene every single time. There's a reason that people don't intervene every single time. But yes, hopefully today we can talk about some less taxing ways to intervene. So thank you so much, Katie.
I wouldn't mind sharing a little bit more, if that's okay. Mine was the story about my son being at the Boy Scout camp.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and I think the reason he had a problem was he had really long hair at the time. And this ex-military guy, he went and shot this gun, and I think, he didn't fit the he didn't fit the Boy Scout model, I think, according to the military guy. But the way that he treated him, and he had just yanked him up by the ear, he was down on his tummy and aiming at this target, and he had glanced to look for me, and this Boy Scout guy at the camp teaching shooting said that he moved his gun, and I looked, and nobody else saw this. There were other parents, but the way he lifted my son up off, and just started berating him, and then comes around and starts saying, well, it's okay, buddy. You got to, we got to learn. Well, anyway, my son ended up dropping out of Boy Scouts at that point. Like, he never went back after that. And there are some other things too afterwards that I think happened that were almost PTSD related because of that event. But that was a situation for me. Like, here we are in a place with other educators, and I usually am the one who speaks up and says something. However, I felt so powerless because I don't shoot guns, and did I miss something? But at the end of it, the way he treated my child, or if I would have, any other child, I felt like that's where I felt helpless. Like, I know that it's definitely a situation where we have to practice these things, because we don't have those scenarios in our head. And it's one of the reasons I'm here. Like, I don't ever want a situation like that to happen to me again.
Yes, I think you really bring up this really important point, which is we don't predict how we're going to be called to be a bystander intervention when it happens. Actually, sometimes when things are when it's necessary to intervene, they can be so shocking that people's first reaction is, am I really seeing what I'm seeing? And we watch and wait, right? Because we're not always prepared. And what I have learned about bystander intervention is it doesn't really matter that you get it absolutely right. What matters is you do something. And so taking that little piece of, I guess, insight from you, we can move right into, I hope you all are ready to just jump right into our first scenario to get kind of a baseline of where we're at. So here's the scenario. I hope it's familiar enough. You're attending a Thanksgiving dinner with family, and your uncle, who loves to entertain, starts telling jokes about transgender individuals. The whole table is laughing with him. Now, I have some options about what you can do. And for right now, all I want people to do is enter in the chat what you would do. You can just enter A, B, C, D, E. That's fine. And if you do more than one, that's fine too. So I'll just keep an eye on the chat and see how people are responding right away.
Just want to pop in briefly to say there are some folks who still have your message set to me. And I'm very happy to talk to all of you, but just be sure that if you want everyone to see it, that the little blue box is set back to everyone.
Wow, people really love the D. I see a lot of that, but I also see changing the subject and pulling the ant in. You know, nobody yet has said A. Maybe I saw one B. Yes, I did see one B, but nobody has said A. And actually, none of the above. Okay. Oh, not cool. That is also strong. Like sometimes people, I didn't offer a strong option for our first scenario because it can be so intimidating, but I love that. Not cool. That's right. And I think you're absolutely right. You don't have to say a friend is a transition. You don't need to know someone. Other people are liking not cool. Now we all have a new tool, right? Something's going on and we just simply say not cool, like not cool. Sometimes just that initial verbal response is enough. And when you're the first person to say that, I bet other people will join in too. I actually shared this story in particular because this is hard to admit, but a situation like this happened to me. And I'll tell you really quickly that my aunts, I have 5 aunts on my mom's side, and they all got together to do a little post-marriage bridal shower for me. And it was all going really well. I love my aunts. They're fun people. I almost never see them. And one of them all of a sudden started making jokes about, God, I'm just going to say, she started making jokes about Mexican people. And I just could not say anything. And it felt terrible. So for the people in the room who really are an A, but didn't want to say that, you're not alone. This is hard work. So I just want to say that. Thank you all for also showing up in the chat with, I might lie, even if none of my friends are in transition, is what Heather is saying. There's lots of ideas in here. So I want to move from options for intervening and my story about why I didn't intervene at that time into barriers for intervening. Again, lots of reasons here, but it's important to talk about them because some of them we can move past with knowledge and practice of bystander intervention. For example, uncertainty, we can move past that. Lots of these barriers like fear are a real thing, especially when we're talking about identity-based harassment. If it is a woman of color being harassed by a white man, Will other women of color feel comfortable, feel safe? Comfortable is the wrong word. Will they feel physically safe intervening in that situation? Maybe not. And maybe that's legitimate. Fear could be of other things. Fear could be of, the target moving to you. Fear could be public humiliation, could be all kinds of things. We have that you don't know what to do. Well, we can certainly address that today. We can have lots of ways to address things. Some people say this particular instance did not meet my line of where I felt like it was my personal responsibility to take action. Another one is just feeling like it won't make a difference. So those are some barriers. Does anyone else want to share their particular difficulties in the chat and see if we all kind of converge on some of the same points? Oh, anxiety. Yes, it is. Yes, very much anxiety provoking. Yes. Thank you, Katie.
And actually, if I can just jump off of what Katie said, going back to one of ASAOE's previous presentations that included anxiety, as she said, anxiety is a full body response. So yeah, that'll interrupt the whole process for sure, and is definitely something that I myself relate to.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, yes, the people pleasing. Yes, I can agree with the people pleasing. That was part of the reason I couldn't say anything about the jokes that my aunt was making. Here they all came all this way just for me. And am I really going to be the person who, throws a wet blanket on their funny little jokes, right? It was really, really hard. Okay, well, thank you for sharing those. And as people might think of more barriers, oh yes, this person says Beth tends to fidget and get flushed in the face and maybe even cry. Oh, but you still say something. Yes, that's right. That's right. The only way out is through, right? Thank you all so much for sharing those things. So now that we've kind of gotten through a scenario, we've talked about some barriers, we've talked about our personal experiences. Let's talk about the nuts and bolts of bystander intervention strategies. Some people, talk about all of the strategies or all of the strategies that we've identified so far as the 5 Ds. So that's direct, distract, document, delegate, and delay. And let me tell you, even though I did a number of training on bystander intervention strategies, and I trained trainers and I did all kinds of things, when it came time to pull those 5 words back up again, I was like, direct, distract, delegate, what were the other 2? So this one was not great for me. And I did find another one that I thought was effective as well. So that is the acronym CARED. And I loved how it's kind of like, oh, Wordle, it's a 5-letter word for bystander intervention. First is confront the situation. That would be direct. Another is alert others. So that would be delegate, and even in the 5D model, it talks about delegating. I like to talk about enlisting others, which comes up later, enlisting or engaging others, because people hesitate to take the first action, which is why bystander intervention training is leadership training. It is about taking action in an uncertain situation when a lot of other people are watching and waiting, or maybe no one else is, but people hesitate nonetheless. Another way to say distract is to redirect attention, either the attention of the person being targeted or the attention of the person doing the targeting or doing the harassment. You can enlist your peers and you can document. This could be that you record the situation as it's happening on your phone. You take video. Maybe you can do that. It could also mean, let's say you work with a coworker who is repeatedly getting harassed by another coworker, and by themselves, by itself, each individual moment or action isn't that terrible, but when they are all added up, it means a lot, documenting is really critical and important. So there are some models, the basic idea. But now let's make that really concrete and talk about some things you can do. Just as a review, you can disagree. So the uncle is making jokes. Everybody seems to be in agreement with the original example about the Thanksgiving dinner. And you can say, that's not cool. It's not cool to make those jokes. I really like that example, by the way, or that response, by the way. You can create an emergency. What if you dumped your drink on the table? Oh my God, in his general vicinity. That's one way to like get out of a situation without really having to be the one that, might, I don't know, do something really scary, right? It can be really scary to confront family in that situation. I have record the event here and engage other people. That would be the example of like nudging your aunt and saying, hey, can you reel him in? And then checking in after. And I want to have a special note here about checking in after, because there has been a really common practice of something. It could be something sexist, something racist, something ableist, something classist, something I'm missing some kinds of discriminating terms here. Something could happen in a meeting. And instead of pausing and saying something in the meeting or doing anything about preventing that kind of discrimination from happening again, well-meaning folks will go to the person that the unfortunate thing happened to and say, oh, I couldn't believe that happened. I am so sorry. That was so wrong. I just wanted to tell you how wrong it was. Well, that does not help the person who's experiencing that. It might make you feel a little bit better, but it's not actually helping. So I do not mean check in after in terms of that kind of situation. I mean, when someone is in real danger and maybe you as the bystander feels like you're in danger, somehow wait until it ends and then check in and say, do you feel safe? Do you want to come with me? That's the kind of checking in after. Do you want to make a report? Maybe you're working with a student who maybe should be making a report about someone that they're working with. I hope that makes sense to everyone.
Betsy, if I can jump in with a statement and a question we have in the chat.
Yeah.
Somebody pointed out that another option that you could have is turn the situation into a teachable moment, make it a teachable moment. So also wonderful. I love me some teachable moments, so of course I like that. And one question we have here, if you're a person who is privileged in a situation and you don't risk danger by intervening, would you consider the reasons listed for a person who is experiencing privilege as being just excuses for not stepping in? Isn't it our responsibility to step in? And then this person adds, if it feels uncomfortable to you as the intervener, imagine how it may feel to the person who is in need of an intervention. So yeah, there were a couple questions and a statement there, but basically, if you are someone in a place of privilege, how would you respond to that, Betsy?
I would say that, yes, this is exactly what the literature says. And I guess for me, I don't hold people to that perfectly, right? But absolutely, if you're in a position of privilege and you feel pretty safe being able to say something, then, I mean, yeah, I would lean on the side of, yeah, it's our responsibility. At the same time, no one can respond perfectly and in every single situation. And people have different levels of like spoons, I guess, for lack of a better word, but different levels of ability to respond. And some days are better than others. So I guess, yes, I agree. I just am not going to hold people to that perfectly because we're all human and we're all imperfect. But I really appreciate the sentiment. And it sounds like you are a strong bystander, and I love that you're here today. I'm just going to move on. I only have a couple more slides that I want to cover before we wrap up here. Here are some specific things that people can say, and we can add not cool to that. But the classic, I don't get it. Tell me why that's funny. Oh, sorry to interrupt, but I need to ask this person a question, and whisk them away. The third one is looking at another bystander and saying, does that person look scared to you? Which might be enough to move people into action. Making the person really own what they just said. So wait, are you saying that you think whatever? And finally, you probably shouldn't be saying that at work, which is something that I just recently had to say when a coworker was referring to one of our colleagues as mom, because she is an older woman. And at least I could use the context of at work in that kind of an intervention. Okay, so the last thing we're gonna do before we have discussion and questions in these few minutes we have, again, if you feel comfortable, oh, I love I don't get it. Tell me why that's funny. That's in the chat. Thank you, Katie, followed by I don't find it funny. Thank you. I just wanted to highlight that. Okay, here is our lightning round intervention. So you just we'll read the scenario. And again, you can put what you think you might do, what you might feel comfortable doing in the chat. You're part of a group on social media in which a member is asking for donations for a refugee family that moved to the area. In the comments, there's a thread of people making jokes about sending them a one-way ticket back to where they came from. What might you feel comfortable doing in this situation? Again, just trying to be speedy because in these moments, things just happen. So if we can just, if you feel comfortable, go ahead and add what you might say. Donate and say why it's important. Yes, showing that you value this. Absolutely. Yep, you could. Yep, that might be a situation where you don't feel like you need to get involved. Yep, you could scroll on by. Sorry, is what Beth is saying. Okay. I believe. We have reporting to the group admin and a statement of caring for my fellow humans. Volunteer to help them with everything and call on even more people to help. Some people do, yes, some people do hate getting into anything on social media. Online, it might be useless. It might be. I feel like there's a real continuum of how people would respond in the situation. Some people are more comfortable on a social media setting, and some people are saying either they're not comfortable or they don't think that it would do any good, right? I love these suggestions. Yes, yeah. I'm saying yes too. I would point out that where they came from is probably a very dangerous place, and would they like to go? Would they like a one-way ticket? So we have some disagreement about, how different people would handle it, and that is great because ultimately bystander intervention takes all kinds. Some people are saying this isn't my space to do this. Other people are saying I know exactly what I'd say, and I'd say this and I'd say that. So this is really wonderful. People can continue to add what they think they might do or their suggestions. But I'm going to go ahead and go to this slide here, which is simply about discussions and questions before the next bystander intervention program. Do people have questions or any kind of discussion that they want to do? It is 1 o'clock, so I will just look to the chat and see, or if people want to just turn on their mics and jump in, that is okay too. Beth is asking, do I have the registration link for part 2 available yet? And yes, I think I do.
Yeah, if I can pull it up if you give me just one moment.
Okay.
Oops.
And I will say that if anyone wants this PowerPoint presentation, you can email me. I will put my email in the chat and I will send it to you. And just a reminder that certainly this is preparation for doing a deeper dive on part 2, but I will review the basic ideas before we jump into part 2. So no one has to worry about making sure they attended this first one to attend the second one. And thank you, Anne, for adding that link. Wonderful.
Registration link is in the chat, and if anybody else would like to check out some of our other events, those are on asaoe.org. But yes, that specific link should be to part 2 for this series.
All right, excellent. Well, that is all I have for today. Thank you all so much for your participation, and I look forward to seeing you again.
So I actually had a question I just remembered.
Yeah.
So for some of my colleagues were interested in attending, but I didn't tell them that this was going on until it was happening. So when or how could I get the recording?
And do you know the answer to that? Oh, well, I will ask Anne. And
sorry, Anne forgot to unmute because Anne forgot how Zoom works. No, I was just going to say, Betsy, if you want to send out the recording later, we can do that. Usually it takes a few hours for it to get sent to us and for us to trim it down a little bit.
Right. Yeah.
But then, yeah, we can send that out and you can share that. And then, as Betsy said, anyone who'd like to sign up for the next event, we'll do some.
Yes, we will.
Yeah. I forget the word. What word I want here.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you for that question. I'll just hang out for a couple more minutes till about 1:05 in case there are questions. I'll just be here.
Hey, Betsy, something when you're seen as the person of privilege in the room, I was literally just, so this is something for you to think about for the next one or whatever, because I know a lot of people have left, but I was just in a meeting and the guy's like, I can make Italian jokes because I'm Italian and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, he's like, you'll never catch me making jokes about Mexicans or this. And I'm like, that's not really true, but I'm still the person of privilege in the room. So then if I'm, so anyway, it ended up being a really awkward situation. And I was like, well, I disagree, but then I stopped because it's like, you don't know anyone else at the table, right? Maybe my ancestors are Italian and I just don't look Italian. I don't know. I've never done my ancestry and my mom's adopted. We know nothing. So,
Yeah.
But anyway, so that I was definitely the person of privilege at the table, or seen as that person of privilege. It's someone that is higher ranking than me. It was a company event. And I was just like, I'm like, I don't. Yeah. So anyway,
Well,
I just
want to say, I hear you. I so hear you, because you would think that either the person of privilege, like the leader in the room, or maybe there is somebody who is privileged in some other way, like maybe you had some kind of a privilege in that room, that like you should really say something. But it just doesn't happen that way all of the time. I will say that I can relate because this recently happened to me. I had a coworker who insisted that I do some addressing of envelopes for holiday cards because he liked my handwriting. And like, I expected my supervisor, who happened to be male and very privileged, to recognize that as like inherently sexist. And he just didn't, and it sounds like in your situation, the person who's a supervisor in the room also didn't recognize this behavior as inherently racist. And I guess that's part of the educating ourselves and other people, right? When we're the people of privilege, do we always know what's pretty upsetting for other people of other identities? I don't know if this is addressing exactly what you're looking for, but I'd love to hear what you have to say.
That's the hard part. I mean, so I live in rural America where we still have people, and I live in Oregon too, so I do not live in the South, but we still have people that drive down the road with the Confederate flag and an American flag flying proudly out of their diesel truck while they roll coal